Welcome back, class. Okay, let's go ahead and get started. Let's review our last session, session number 3, before we begin today. Last session, we began with the discussion of one of the key drives that humans have, that all biological animals have, and that is hunger. So we understood from one of the earlier slides that hunger is not just your stomach growling. There are many factors that come into play that will motivate us to eat something that causes that drive of hunger that we may sense. We also discussed the physiology of hunger, talking about such things as the metabolism that we have, the way that we can burn off excess energy. We also talked about glucose or blood sugar that has a great deal of impact in determining when we may experience feelings of hunger. And then we also mentioned the set point. I want to emphasize something about the set point. The set point is where your body sort of establishes your weight. And when you are attempting to diet, for example, you go on a diet, and let's say we lose some weight, what will happen is your body will sort of fight you against that. And what it will do is that, one, it will increase your hunger so that you want to eat more food. Even though you've lost weight, you now are more hungry than you normally are. In addition, it would also slow down your metabolism so that normally you get some food in, you'd burn off some of that food, but now you're burning off less because your body is basically trying to get you back to that certain set point weight that it has established. We also then talked about the hypothalamus again and about its specific roles that it has in controlling our hunger and how it is that we can have certain eating behaviors motivated by certain aspects of the hypothalamus brain structure. And then we ended up talking about hormones' influence on the appetite. We looked at a variety of types of hormones that exist in our body and their role in enhancing or changing or modifying our particular appetite, like ghrelin, insulin, PYY, leptin, and things of that nature. We'll start off today by looking a little bit more closely at one of those hormones and a substance that we talked about previously in the chapter on consciousness in the two-track mind, marijuana or pot or cannabis. So, drugs and hunger. As we've talked about previously in a previous lecture, we know the consumption of cannabis can cause something called the munchies. And I just want to go real quickly to describe to you what that process is. So when you consume cannabis, there's a substance, the active ingredient, THC. What will happen is it will bind with these cannabinoid receptors in the body. So we have these receptor sites that are designed to be receptive to the molecule structures of certain types of substances. So it binds with the CB1 receptor sites and it then increases our appetite by increasing ghrelin, for example. So what that means is it has an influence on hormones in our body that will have an impact on our desire to eat things. Okay, so then we have the munchies. Now, looking at the psychology of hunger more quickly, a little bit more deeply here, we have body chemistry and brain activity, okay? But psychology plays a significant role as well. So it involves the body chemistry, brain activity, and the memory of the last time you had a meal. All these things come into play in order for you to experience hunger. In addition to that, we have also things like your taste preferences, influenced by body cues and environmental factors. We are creatures of our environment just as much as we are creatures of anything. So in some environments, we may have developed certain tastes for certain types of food. Let's think, for example, country ham. If you're familiar with country ham, it's very salty. Okay, and we see this a lot in southern regions of the country and really hot environments. There's a reason behind that, and we may have more of a sense or preference for more salt on our food because we grew up in this region of the country. If you think about hundreds of years ago when we didn't have technology and freezers and refrigerators, one way in order to store food for longer periods of time in order to protect it while it's being stored was to salt the food, and therefore a preference developed in us in order to do that. In other parts of the world where it is not a very hot climate. It doesn't get hot. It's cold usually. You'll probably see a lot less preference for certain types of food or condiments and things like salt and spices. Now, looking at this slide a little bit to the left here, right here, we see that countries with hot climates in which food historically spoiled more quickly feature recipes with more bacteria inhibiting spices. And what it comes down to is this. The hotter the climate, the more spices used. That's what the research would tend to suggest. If you are in a hotter climate, you'll use more spices, particularly spices that inhibit the growth of bacteria. That is something that makes perfect sense if you think about it. The hotter climates, they use more spices because it allowed them to live longer and more healthily. Now, there are a lot of social influences on our eating. There are things that can cause us to have our appetite more stoked or aroused. We have friends in food, for example. The presence of others influences us to eat more. When others are around, we typically eat more. The presence of people tend to amplify our natural eating behavior. So more people around, if you tend to eat a little bit more than normal, you will eat more when other people are around. If you tend a little bit eat a little bit less than normal, you may eat a little bit less. So it sort of naturally amplifies whatever the tendencies that we have. We also see there's an impact of serving size. The greater serving sizes increases our eating behavior. We eat more when we get more. So if you think about it, when they ask you at a fast food restaurant to supersize something, it sort of entices us to eat more and may even go back for seconds. So the idea is that these things do influence our behavior. And then there's another influence on our eating as well. Selection size. A larger variety of food also enhances our eating. So when you have a larger variety of food present, you will eat more. So this goes back to one of the items that was mentioned in the intro to this particular chapter about an obese person wanting to lose weight. They should eat a large variety of food. I think that was the way it went, and that's a false statement because when you have a large variety of food, like at a buffet, you tend to eat more of the food. Period. And then there's the idea of nudging nutrition. And these are attempts by government officials and parents even sometimes to prod individuals to make healthier choices to eat more nutritious foods. Sometimes you'll see public service announcements telling you the benefits of eating more vegetables or greenery and things of that nature. So we see that these things do have the power to influence our eating behavior in some ways, and we try to do these things to try to make us a healthier people. Now, as we begin to wrap things up a little bit on this particular few slides here, let's talk about a major factor that everyone is dealing with. Is something that's growing leaps and bounds in a way throughout the world, and that's the effects and the problems dealing with obesity. Obesity is defined as a body mass index of a measurement of 30 or higher. Overweight individuals have a BMI of 25 or higher, but you're considered obese if it's 30 or higher. Now, let's talk a little bit about the effects of obesity. Obviously, there's going to be things like physical risks to obesity include things such as diabetes, high blood pressure, heart disease, and also even bullying, social bullying, and of course depression. There are some physiological factors as well. First of all, it should be noted that storing fat, which is a key ingredient to obesity, is fat. Storing fat was at one point extraordinarily adaptive to us. It allowed us to survive Okay, and so when food became quite scarce for our ancestors a long time ago, if they did not have fat stored in their body, they would simply die. Okay, so storage of fat is like extra reserves of energy that we can use when times get really tough. So other factors that we've talked about again is the set point and metabolism. They do matter when it comes to obesity, where your set point or your weight thermostat is set, and how does your metabolism affect your weight as well. Some people may have metabolic issues that may cause them to be obese based on that particular fact alone. And of course, genes also influence us. Genes influence our ability to maintain weights. Some may tend to be leaner. Some may have larger body masses. So some people will see they are what they refer to sometimes as big bone. They're naturally sort of a larger people. And some people can be whipped skinny, very, very thin. And that too could be signs of genetic influences on their weight. And then there are other environmental factors, a couple of which we've discussed before, as we discussed in Chapter 3, Consciousness in the Two-Track Mind. Sleep loss plays a role in weight gain by increasing ghrelin, okay, a hormone that, again, as we've seen, stimulates the appetite, and by decreasing leptin, which reports body fat to the brain. We also see there are other social influences. Our our bodies, when we become obese, our odds of becoming obese triple when we have friends that are obese. We also see too there's a social economic status too. Generally speaking, in order to eat healthy, you tend to have greater funds to eat healthier, to get more choices and healthier selections. But people in the lower SES or socioeconomic statuses, they may have fewer funds, but they're able to eat food and buy food. The cheaper food tends to be fatter. And then we have food and activity levels. Worldwide, we eat more and move less, leading to higher rates of obesity around the world, with an activity averaging less than 20 minutes a day, meaning that we tend to be less active. As previous generations, and on average, we are active for less than 20 minutes a day. And finally, there are weight loss strategies here. You can see them in your textbook, but again, it is a major issue that we are experiencing in our culture today when it comes to weight. So let's go ahead and stop there, and we'll start back for the next lecture on emotion and factors dealing with emotion.